Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Sew Comfort with Amanda. I'm your host Amanda, and I'm excited you are here today to learn a little bit more about sewing. Now, as my background, I am a volunteer for Cook Children's Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. As a stitcher, I make comfort items for the hospital, and I used to hold pillowcase parties or sew comfort workshops. Now, I've been hosting those since 2015, and I've helped about 16 girls and their moms learn about the basics of sewing through this project. Several friends have asked me, because they live in other parts of the state and the country, to show you how to make this project. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start a project on how to make the small pillowcases for the hospital. These are also the same size that you would use for a travel pillow for, say, yourself or your toddler. So I'm going to go over the basic steps of how to make this. The very first thing you're going to do is wash all of your fabric in a dye-free, fragrance-free soap and fabric softener and Clorox 2 or other color-safe bleaching product. That will get all of the icky oils, dirt, and finishing products off of your fabric. Then you're going to use your iron and press that fabric so that it's nice and flat like the one I have here in front of me. You are going to need a child-friendly fabric like this monkey and about 10 to 12 inches of a contrasting solid or print that looks like a solid like this. This is called a marble. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into the cutting portion of the project. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is cut our fabric. I actually folded mine so that it shows into the whole frame, but you can do yours straight across however you want. First thing you do is even up the end of the fabric and make sure that you have a straight edge and no little pieces hanging off. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is measure 21 inches. Now, for the sake of those who do not have a rotary cutter, I am going to show you what that looks like with a pencil. And what I do, or what you can do if you don't have a rotary cutter, is use something like this General's charcoal white pencil on a dark fabric or a water-soluble pen from Dritz or another manufacturer, and you can just mark your fabric at the 1 inch mark, and you can use a pair of scissors to cut that. Now, I'm actually going to use a rotary cutter because I find that to be the most accurate way of cutting, and I do like the Ofla version that looks like a pizza cutter. So now I'm going to measure, line up at the 21 inches, and I should be right along that line I just made. All right, so there is the bottom of the pillowcase, but that's just the first cut. We're going to have to cut it down to 31. Now, I like to do more than one thing at a time if I can. So the next thing I'm going to show you, we're going to fold this fabric and line it up. Again, I use the 1 inch mark, and I'm going to cut my 9 inch cuff. Now, these measurements again are for the Cook Children's Hospital small pillowcase pattern or a travel pillow. Okay. So here's 9 inches. And I cut it again with my rotary blade. Again, you can use the measuring device to make a line and use scissors. Okay, so now the next step, I'm going to actually show you that I will fold or extend my fabric along a straight line, and I'm going to do 31, so I'm going to put my salvage right around 41 on my mat so that I cut at the 10 mark. So it will look a little different than what you're used to seeing. Okay. And then I fold this in half so that it all fits under my ruler. And again, I measure the straight edge, and I find that salvage and move it also to the 41 mark. And I make sure that I'm cutting on the inside of the salvage so that we have all good fabric. Otherwise, you can get some stretching because of the looming process. Right? So now I'm going to cut this where I lined everything up on that 41. And again, the actual measurement is 31 because we are 15 by 24 when we're finished sewing. So I'm going to cut on the 10. And I just noticed this one is no longer straight, so that's okay. I'll just move it down so that it is straight. And line it up on that 10, because 10 plus 31 is 41. And we'll cut. All right. And now that you have your cuff fabric cut, the next thing we're going to do is fold it in half and use your iron to press the fabric in half. Now, pressing is not the same thing as ironing. Ironing is where you run the fabric across the top, the iron across the top of the fabric, and pressing is where you set it down. Now, the reason I make this distinction is that when you're working with a cotton and a steam iron, the steam will actually push the fibers apart. So what you want to do is a nice press, not an iron, when you have your iron set to steam like I do. So we're going to press 1, 2, 3, and continue down the line. 1, 2, 3. You can hear the steam. 1, 2, 3, and just do that the whole way down. Now, it wasn't fully heated when I went there. Okay, and of course I just ironed it. Bad habits die hard. I used to do that all the time when I was a teenager. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take this to the sewing machine. And for the purpose of a Cook Children's pillowcase, we're going to add a label. And the labels can be, you can request them by email from the volunteer coordinator. So you just stitch along that line. So I'll take you to the sewing machine and show you that process. Okay, so here I am at the sewing machine, and I'm going to open up my cuff. And I'm going to go ahead and have my pressing line towards me and the label text towards the machine. So my text is going towards this pressing line. And I'm going to just put down my presser foot and go about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I'm using just a white on this project because almost all of our seams are going to be hidden inside. And just go ahead and add that label using the sewing machine. Just like this. And as you can see, I was just pivoting around each corner by lifting up my needle. And it's a very fast process to add that label. You can also embroider Cook Children's on there if you do not desire to wait for these in the mail. Okay, so now I'm going to take my cuff, refold it, and I'm going to find my pillowcase fabric. This is not a one-way design. The monkeys go in all different directions. However, if it was a one-way design, you want to make sure that the text of your label goes in the same direction as the pattern. And I am going to just go ahead and flip it upside down because the most prominent monkey, that guy, was upside down. So I'll just go ahead and treat it that way. Now, the actual seam allowances for this pattern are 1/2 inch because the idea is that you are going to use your zigzag after you make your, after you sew it together. I will actually use a serger, and I'm going to show you the only step I really use a sewing machine for is the label and then this part. You can do the whole thing with a sewing machine. Again, using your zigzag to finish the edge, or you can do it all on a serger. It is your call. I prefer to attach the cuff to the body of the fabric as the next step because for me it is the easier process and it's the easier process I've found for my 8-year-old students to learn. And As you can see, I just guide it with my left hand. Sorry for the bump. I just got it with my left hand and use my right hand to hold it together. Now I do teach the girls to pin it first because it likes to try and run away, and I spend a lot of time just readjusting it. But once you get really comfortable, like I am, I've done this project over 150, 200 times in the last 6 years. There's no big deal. It's no big deal. Okay, so now once you get to the end, I want you to tie off, which will reinforce that seam. And cut your thread, and voila, your cuff is now attached to the body of your fabric. The next step is actually to zigzag over this if you are utilizing a sewing machine, or it is to take it to your serger and reinforce that seam. All right, I'm at the serger. I'm going to go ahead and run this under the foot, and it's very easy once you get it threaded. You just run it under the serger. Back to the ironing board. All right, so now we're going to iron our cuff seam down. And this needs to be done no matter what, no matter which way you decide to finish your seam, okay? So you're just going to use the iron and try to press it as much as possible. If you're using steam, the steam will set the seam nicely. And when you open it up, you'll see that it's nice and crisp. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is match the top edges and our seam. And we're going to use some handy dandy ballpoint pens. These are just simple, the basic ones I get from Joann's, but you can also buy them at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, pretty much Amazon, pretty much anywhere that you can find Dritz brand pens. So now we're going to pin it at the top by poking it through and pushing it up. We're going to make sure our seams match up as best we can. Poke it down, bring it through. And then I'm going to put about one more pin down the middle, or about halfway down, I mean. And close, about 2 inches from the end. Okay, and then the middle is no big deal. We're just going to put 2 pins down here. You can do as many as you want. You can push them the way I am into the seam. Please do not run over them with your serger or your sewing machine. If you do, then you will risk breaking it and having it break off into your face, which is one of the worst injuries that you can have in sewing. It's pretty much about the biggest one. So please do not run over these pins. The safer way to pin it for a child is to pin it down and across so that you have to pause and take them out in order to take them out each time. Okay, so now we're back to the serger. All right, I'm at the serger and I'm going to put my fabric under the presser foot. Again, we are not going to run over our pins. We're going to pull this one out immediately. And you're going to make sure that you have enough tail on the serger in order to pull that seam taut, okay? So go ahead and start. Just pause to pull the pin out and continue sewing. Now I do cut off just a little bit. You can cut off up to 1/4 inch and still be within the seam allowance on the most basic settings, the neutral position of a Husqvarna Husky Loft serger like mine. Again, pausing to pull out a pin. Now you're going to take it about 1/2 inch past the actual seam, the actual corner. Pull it under, lift your presser foot, press the fabric up against the knife, put down the foot, just like that, and start sewing again. Pull out a nice long tail. We're going to show you what to do with that in a minute. And you can use the knife on your machine. Yeah, the knife on your machine to cut it off. And make sure you have a good inch, 1.5 extending from your pillow. Okay, and you'll see when I did that turn, what that did is it sealed that corner. So like I said, about 1/2 inch out, turn it, and then start again. That seals the corner so that you don't have to tie or tuck the ends of your stitching. Now, I'm going to show you how we finish this, and then we're going to turn it right side out. From here, you're going to take a pair of snips of your choice, and you're going to use them to cut a new end on your top thread. So you're going to pull out the thread and find the end and snip it off. Now you're going to use a large tapestry or yarn needle, and you're going to feed your ends into the eye of that needle. And you're going to push this whole needle down into the seam. In between the 2 layers of fabric is ideal. Let me put it in the right hand, and then I can show you what I'm doing. And we're going to push that down under the seam, or under the serging thread, till it catches. Okay, and then you're going to pull that thread into your seam. All right, pull it taut, a little tight, clip close to the end, and then fold it back out. This will protect the ends of your serging so that it is not going to pull out whenever this item is washed. Another technique is actually to tie the ends and then cut them off. This is the way my mom taught me. I've used it on numerous projects and never had a problem, so this is what I'm teaching. So go ahead and push that down and pull. Again, snip it. Perfect. All right. So now we're going to turn our project right side out and press it. Once you do that, you're done. Now, why are we pressing our project? Well, nobody wants a pillowcase that looks like it's been used. And the actual turning process kind of wads up the fabric. You'll see so we want to make sure that we have a nice crisp edge whenever we give this to our patients at the hospital, or if you're making it for a toddler for a travel pillow, then you just want it to have a nice crisp edge and be something nice when you present it. Okay, so you'll see I pushed out all the corners using my fingers. You can also use a corner pusher tool, but my child has seemed to have run off with mine, so I'll just use my fingers, and you can see you just push it out like that. All right. And then we're going to make sure our label is down on the ironing board. I actually had some girls do this at my last workshop where they had it face up and they melted them, and we had to start over on the labels. Not exactly my favorite thing to redo. So, all right, I pull out my seam so that it's as crisp and close to the edge as possible, and then I press it. 1, 2, 3. And you can iron the whole thing. Sometimes you get a little discoloration from the heat. That's okay. Once the fabric cools down and the water from the steam evaporates. That'll go away. Okay. And then just press it. That discoloration is literally just steam. Not the same if you're using synthetic fabrics such as satin, vinyl, some silks, some will do this. Those you need to turn your iron down if that happens. Okay, so then the whole pillowcase I'm just going to iron so that it's nice and pretty for when we present it to the hospital. All right, and there you have it. We are done sewing our pillowcase. All right, the very last thing we want to do with our pillowcase is use a lint roller and get any dust or fiber or hair that may have come from your studio off of your project. And then you will go ahead, and if you're donating it to the hospital, you're going to use this in-kind donation form and send that in your box or package. And it will give you a form for any tax write-off purposes, volunteer hours, whatever you need. If it's just for a friend, pack it up nicely and watch them enjoy. So here we go. We're going to add this to the large box that I have already started for the hospital. So, all right. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial on how to make a small pillowcase for Cook Children's Hospital or a toddler. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube and like our channel, So Comfort with Amanda. I hope that you will continue to learn how to paint with fabric and join us for our next project. Thank you.